Bible, God's inspired word, says there came a sound from heaven, and that's the sound we need. The truth, present truth that can set you free.
One of the things I've come to learn is that wilderness experiences can be legitimate or illegitimate. The Israelites went from Egypt to the Promised Land. That was legitimate. But when they refused to go into the Promised Land, they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. That was illegitimate. It didn't need to happen. Maybe you're going through a legitimate wilderness experience. That's what Jesus went through. In Matthew chapter 4, it says, "Then was Jesus led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterward hungry. And when the tempter came to him, he said, 'If you be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread.' But Jesus answered and said, 'It is written, man shall not live,'" notice, "man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God." I like that. That's the devil's first temptation. You see, Jesus was in the will of God, and the Spirit led him into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. I believe if the devil could have gotten away that day, he would have. You see, the devil always comes to people in secondary causes. In other words, he never meets them head on. He always uses something else. What did he say to Eve, to Adam and Eve, mostly to Eve, of course? What did he say? He didn't say, "Serve me." He said, "No, serve yourself, please yourself." But here, it's face to face with the devil. It's Jesus grabbing him out and saying, "Look, this is it, man." And Jesus was the victor. And I think the devil was the one that wanted to run. But the devil, being true to himself, tempts Jesus. And what does he do? He says, "Turn these stones into bread. Are you hungry? Well, turn these stones into bread." Nothing wrong with bread. Nothing wrong with bread. But when it lies outside the will of God for your life, then there's something wrong. In other words, Jesus was fasting. It says he fasted 40 days. You see, you fast not because you bought a book and the book tells you to fast. You fast because the Lord speaks to you to fast, not because some other person told you to do it. It's something between you and God. Matthew tells us that. But Jesus is fasting, so bread was not part of the confines of his will, not part of the circle, not part of the will of God. So the devil was trying to get Jesus to step outside the circle of his will by saying this, "Turn these stones into bread." Well, what is he saying? He's saying satisfy a legitimate thing in an illegitimate way. And the devil will try to get you to do the same thing. He'll try to get you to satisfy a legitimate thing in an illegitimate way. Let me tell you something. Sex before marriage is a sin, but within the circle of the will of God for your life, it's a holy thing. It's a wonderful God-given thing. But the enemy will try to get you to step outside the will of God, the institution of marriage, and he'll try to get you to satisfy a legitimate thing in an illegitimate way. I say, let's look at the enemy and pull out the Bible and say, "It is written, man doesn't live by the material. He doesn't live by satisfying the animal appetite. He doesn't live by the material thing alone, but he lives according to the Word of God." His satisfaction is not in pleasing himself. His satisfaction lies in submission to the will of God. Stay in the confines of his will, and you too will be the happiest person ever, just to know you found the will of God and you stuck to it.
For more information, visit us online at acertainsound.com.